Oksana, like Kelly, also told me that her favorite Christmas tradition was getting presents. And I think if we're all honest, it's our favorite tradition. Oksana is honest about Christmas traditions. She wants jewelry and gadgets and sweaters and mittens. When the sale signs go up, she flies like a flash to buy presents and presents with some cold, hard cash. She wraps the new scarves and folds the new clothes, then carefully ties up the boxes in bows. On Christmas Eve, she has herself a nightcap to rest and rests her credit card for a long winter's nap. The next morning, her family gathers round the tree, and she says, "Don't touch those, they're all for me."
True story, that too. So guys, I'm really medicated. Right now, I took NyQuil instead of Dayquil. I know you're not laughing at me. Something else happened. Okay. All right, so if I stop reading, it's probably because I'm coughing too hard and just can't go on, not because I get emotional when I'm on NyQuil. That's another story. So this is from a book that I've been working on for almost a couple of years, and it wraps around 7 central characters who live in kind of like a boarding house in the middle of Vegas. And two of these characters we meet in this chapter. One of them is Eric, and he is a writer who is trying to drink himself to death after his fiancée leaves him. You know, a familiar story, right? And Michael is his friend who's trying to get him out of the rut. So we pick up when Michael brings an analog television set into Eric's apartment, and Eric is freaking out because he doesn't understand what is going on. Michael continued to adjust the image on the TV by moving the antenna while talking. It's not part of the reading. I've been working on a program. I hacked into the system at work and used some of its components to create something which could potentially upend the axis of logic theory. The entire scientific community, for that matter. Eric didn't exactly know what kind of a reaction was expected of him, but considering the wild-eyed look on the scientist's face, he did the best he could under the circumstances. He remained silent, nodded often, and made sure to frown in a contemplative manner. Michael continued, "That's one of the reasons I had to find an analog processor, like this television. Otherwise, the signal can be traced. You see, if my boss ever found out, he'd kill me." Eric spit out the cigarette butt into an overstuffed ashtray. Apparently he was smoking. "What are you talking about?" Michael worked for the tech branch out of Area 51, but even though most of the research conducted at the facility was top secret, Eric never believed it dangerous. "Did you steal something?" "Never mind that, I might have exaggerated a little bit." Michael dismissed Eric's troubled expression with a wave of a hand. "You've heard of Newton's laws of motion, right?" "Maybe in college." "The third law? For every action, there's a reaction." "So?" "This program reveals a direct link between an action and the reaction. On a universal scale." He flipped his arms out to demonstrate the gravity of this last statement. "So it's something to do with space," said Eric. NyQuil. Can't even read my own. I've forgotten half of it. "Be serious. Based upon the information I produced from your chart, plus the calculated physical libration and the approximate hour angle, I've established a connection between you and another body. Do you have any idea what this means?" "English, please." "Come sit." Michael placed the chair right in front of the television, and Eric, intrigued by his friend's behavior, took a seat. Michael pointed at the screen and spoke as if to a 5-year-old. "This planet, I call it Eric 2, is a white giant." "Thank you," Eric said slowly, "for naming it for me. Eric 2 is about 20 billion light years away." "Fascinating," said Eric. It's on a brink of disintegration, which you will bring about unless the drinking and the snorting and the smoking and the moping stop. Eric rose. Now I really have to go and get hammered. Sit, Michael pushed him back down. You are the action. This planet is the reaction. Every time you harm yourself, the further down the path of self-destruction you travel, Eric too suffers, gets bombarded with meteor showers or wobbles off its axis a little. When Eric moved out the chair this time, he made it all the way to the kitchenette before Michael followed with more nonsense. Don't you see the magnitude of this? He took off his jacket and tossed it aside as if it didn't cost a fortune. That stupid grin tells me that you do not. You expect me to believe that every time I take a leak, the tides on Eric too rise? Do you realize how fucking idiotic that sounds? Are we on camera? Disclaimer to my children, I never curse. The kitchen, an 8x3 piece of linoleum with a sink, a mini fridge, and a breakfast countertop, smelled like a dog. 2 people couldn't fit it into it simultaneously. Perhaps Eric had an ulterior motive for positioning himself there, further away from the insane bald man on the other side of the counter. Please be serious, Michael prompted, and stop with the garbage already. I poured all the liquor down the drain. I don't need to be saved, Michael. I'm a grown person, body hair and all. This last attempt at the joke was met with a stern, unmovable scowl. Eric found a water bottle in the fridge and squeezed the cap off with a deadly twist. What do you want me to say? Test it. Give me a chance to convince you. He should have just left, Eric thought later that night, before the whole thing went to shit. But the opportunity to prove Michael wrong, to show him that everything was just fine, seemed too great to pass. You've got 10 minutes. With a measure of distaste, he poured plain water down his throat, then followed Michael back to the TV. The scene remained unchanged, its natural serenity almost infectious. Eric avoided the chair. He chose a spot some distance from Eric too, and immediately reprimanded himself for using that ludicrous name. Well, Michael blew a decisive breath. You have to do something for it to show any effects. Something bad? Terribly. Eric found the pack of Carlton 100s and lit another cigarette. No, something more drastic to see an immediate change. Oh, this is going to be drastic, Eric said, and lowered the smoldering cig to his forearm. He paled at the searing pain as it scorched his skin at a single point. Hellfuck, he said. Somehow this trick didn't look as painful when someone did it on TV. That should work, Michael returned, his attention to the screen, not at all concerned. Eric ground the cigarette into the ashtray. Glad I could help. The burn had sent an agonizing shockwave through his body, and it took all of his self-control not to cringe. He began to pace instead. There. The awe in Michael's voice was hard to ignore. A gigantic, milk-white cloud made a slow spiral walk across the planet's surface. It looked like a miniature galaxy with a black hole in the middle around which it rotated. Eric refused to come closer, but didn't take his eyes off the scene. Is that a hurricane? A giant one. A cyclone of this proportion is relatively the size of Earth. It's deadly. By the time it travels around the planet's circumference, it will destroy any living organism in its path. Are there any? Michael turned away from the screen. His glasses had slid down the bridge of his nose, and he studied Eric with interest over the black rims. Is there anything alive on that fucking rock? Eric demanded. In that moment, he despised Michael. For days now, no weeks, months, for months now, he had managed not to feel emotionally yoked to anything or anyone. He wrapped himself in misery and rage over Lily's actions. It was like digging at a hangnail. He liked it. Not that I give a damn, just want to know how far you'd go playing this game. The rhythmic pulse of the burn throbbed up and down his arm. Answer me. I don't know if there's life, but given more time to research, leave, get your stuff and go. I'm not going anywhere. You have to believe me. Fine. Eric found his Skechers and forced his feet into one, then another. His toes hit something bulky, and he pulled out the wallet that he couldn't find earlier, stuffing it into his back pocket. Then I'll go. Eric, wait. Eric ran down the stairs past his landlord and a woman standing next to him with arms tightly folded across her chest, past two men lugging suitcases up the front steps of the house, past the limo with a man sitting on the hood smoking. He hardly noticed any of them. Maybe he'd hardly noticed Michael trying to meddle in his life. Maybe by the time he got back, all would be back to normal. Thank you.